Welcome back to Beagle Eye Vision! We're grinding here again. Got some more grinding here. Get some Irish crickets. Shout out Victory the podcast. So, we got some Irish crickets. I mean, I want to keep grinding, even though I know I've been here to Vault 95, and I noticed that the next episode is 1 hour and 53 minutes long. So once I noticed that, I said, holy shiitake mushrooms. I better get to grinding, because this is going to be a doozy of an episode. We're on episode... Hold on, Spotify's scrolling. We're on episode number 55, Green Language of the Birds. Now, I think he might get into some Alfred Hitchcock. I don't know. Who knows? We're about to find out. It's going to be another amazing episode. Like I said, I've been here to Vault 95, but I know for a fact that enemies regenerate here, so that's why I keep coming back. Enemies regenerate. Loot regenerates. I need some junk. I need some scrap. I need screws. I need plastic. I need steel. I need wood. I need radiation material. I need it all. I need screws. Adhesive, I need glue, I need super glue, I need wonder glue, I need a Braxo cleaner. There's a lot of stuff I need. So we're going to go roam through Vault 95 for literally no reason, and we're going to get some knowledge. The reason why I've been going back to the same locations, and I'm going to continue to go back to the same locations, is because it is not about the gameplay. It is about the content. It is about the knowledge. It is about the grind of studying the knowledge. That's what grinding is all about. So I've talked enough. As the game is telling me I have done, it's sending me to the screen. But here we go. Let's get some more knowledge. Thank you, Nate Cap. Episode 55, CubbyWhole Podcast. Let's get it.
Such a hot topic issue is because we're talking about law. Who gets to be God? Who gets to be God's deputies? Who is the Most High? Who is the divine authority? It's all about the claim of the Most High. The only way that somebody can be higher than us is if we give away our power. Because there's nobody, we're all equal. But we're not equal in our knowledge, so ultimately I think it does have to be a hierarchy, but it has to be a cooperative hierarchy, like a bee colony. It's about what our value system is, what we care about.
Hello, Hive Mind. Today is July 11th, 2022. Big 7-Eleven today. I'm your host, Nate Cap, and welcome to the 55th CubbyWhole podcast, where critical topics are unveiled, discussed, and tested. The website for this show is CubbyWhole.com. That's CubbyWhole.com. And if you prefer to listen to this show on a different platform, you can also listen on Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Simplecast, YouTube, Odyssey, and much more. So thanks for tuning in today. Hopefully you guys are doing well and in the mood to learn the deeper aspects of green language. And also I'm going to be talking about the language of the birds. So I'm going to be covering both of these languages extensively on this episode. And this is all taking place within the second degree of Freemasonry. And it's really important to think about the definition, or the beginning of the definition of Freemasonry when thinking about these languages, which is a system of morality. Okay, so if you really want to understand the system of morality, we have to learn and understand green language and the language of the birds. We have to have a basic understanding at least, because both of these languages are nature languages. They're what help us understand the system in nature. Okay? So I really highly recommend listening and paying very close attention to this whole show. So that way you'll really get the guts or the goods of what I'm presenting or what I'm trying to convey. Because if you listen enough to these sacred, symbolic, abstract languages, I really do believe that the patterns of these languages will reveal themselves to you. The ideas will reveal themselves to you. And I know I've talked about green language and used green language quite a bit in these shows, so has Douglas and Brandon, especially in the 40s and 50s, maybe even the 30s. And it's kind of like word puns or word play, right? But it's, like I said, it's about understanding the system of morality. So we have to have an understanding of morality. We have to understand the science of morality to understand the purpose of green language and the language of the birds. Okay? Now, because we're in the second degree of esoteric Freemasonry, this is the degree that has to do with the heart, right? It has to do with the heart, and it has to do with the mind in a balanced frequency to be able to have the right ear to hear with the heart and the mind. Because to be able to listen with the heart is to listen with the mind, a balanced mind. And that's so important to pay very close attention to. And this is something that the ancient Egyptians understood very deeply, okay? Now, like I said, I'm going to cover green language and what's known as the language of the birds. And I'm going to use both of these languages together. I'm going to explain both of these languages, these synonymous languages, and why they're so crucial to understand. So I'll be using both languages interchangeably throughout the whole episode. And hopefully you guys are ready to follow along with the slides that I've created for this show, which you can find at CubbyWhole.com, and go to where it says episodes 51 plus, click on that, and then go down to show 55 at the bottom, and you'll see the thumbnails of the slides. Click on that, and then you'll be able to scroll through the slides and follow along. And in case you guys didn't watch the last episode, I talked about how I updated the website and everything is functioning so much better now, and it's not embarrassing anymore like it used to be. So I apologize to anybody who had issues with the slides, especially because I don't know, I just, something was wrong with how it was set up. I couldn't figure it out for the longest time. And, I never really spent enough time trying to figure it out. But every time I did try to ask somebody on the end of BoldGrid or WordPress, they were not helpful at all. And so it was very, very frustrating and difficult, but I ended up figuring it out on my own, trying something different. And there's these white side columns on the sides of the thumbnails, and I'm not sure how to get rid of them, but it works and functions properly. So that's all I care about. But, if you guys know how to get rid of those white parts, please email me and let me know. And if you have any issues on your end, if something is not looking right or not working properly, please email me and let me know so I can fix that, because the last thing I want is for this to be a difficult place to go learn this type of information like it was before. So I really appreciate anybody who's still listening and paying attention, who worked through all that crap. But you can also, now it's a little easier to right click and save the images, so that way you can study those images on your own, and you can also use them in your presentations if you want to. Do whatever you want with them. They're out there for free, and you don't need my permission to use them. But the thing is that these images are here for the serious student, to follow along with. So that way it's a lot easier to understand what it is that we're trying to convey on these shows by following along with the images. So that way we get a better connection and deeper understanding of what it is that is being conveyed on the show, or what I'm trying to present here. So I'm going to go ahead and start with slide number 1 that says green language of the birds. Now, if you're familiar with the language of the birds or green language, I really recommend that you stay till the end of the show, even if you think you might have this language completely figured out, or these languages completely figured out, which I think anybody in their right mind who's studying these languages knows that you cannot understand these languages completely, because as far as I know, they're a unfoldment of information. So it's just, I'm always finding something more out about these languages, and they're always revealing so much more information that's so valuable. And I would say that there really isn't an absolute understanding of these languages, but what I'm going to share today, I really feel that anyone, no matter how advanced or how new you are to this type of information, I really think you'll walk away with something very interesting to think about and contemplate on. You'll definitely gain some very powerful keys to the ancient mysteries and about reality and the deeper connections we can discover about ourselves within nature or with nature. So these languages are part of understanding sovereignty, okay? Because it's about heading in the right direction towards freedom. So these are very important languages to pay very close attention to. And I understand why so many people stay away from these types of languages, because it sounds crazy. It sounds silly. Green language, what is that? Is it just, some green font? Is your breath green when you talk a certain language? Or if you're speaking the language of the birds, are you able to talk to birds? Literally, But we have to get past that materialistic mindset, because to be in a materialistic mindset means we're still in our child state. So we have to raise ourselves to be able to speak in the green. We have to be able to raise ourselves to speak the language of the birds. And I'm going to explain what I mean by this as I move forward. And I think once we get through all this content, then we'll really start to understand what I'm saying. So to stay ignorant to these languages really is about limiting ourselves to man's authority in language itself. We have to really dig deep and have our Shoshin on, our beginner's mind. We have to be able to clear our mind and ego to be able to see and be in the right frequency to hear this type of information. So if you've made it this far, you're ready. Believe me, you're ready. Okay. Now, in the beginning of this episode, I'm going to briefly go over some things I've kind of touched on already in past shows, just to give some necessary prerequisites of what I'm going to be covering. And then I'm going to break down green language and dive deep into the language of the birds and how important it is to understand green language with the language of the birds. So also at the end of this show, if I have any time, I'll do some phonetic breakdowns. And, during the whole show, I'll be doing certain phonetic breakdowns as well. But I think I'm going to save the whole phonetic breakdown of words for the next show, and hopefully get Brandon on and we can do an exchange of words together. And I think that'll be a lot of fun, if you want to call it that, but it'll be really cool just to see the words that he has, because I know he has tons of words, and I do too, but it would just be cool to do a whole show where we're just breaking down all these words so you really see the moral parallels in the words and really get the, because, the more that you hear this type of information and the more that you start to see how it works, then you catch on faster, right? So that's kind of the goal of this, is to help you, the serious student, catch on to this language, to these languages, so that way you really grasp it and you'll be able to see and hear and speak it, because it's a powerful thing to wake up to.
Yes.
So, to start off, remember that I talked about Masonry being at the foundation of letters and numbers and codings within our language, because remember, letters and numbers are symbols, and they're made into words, which are made to see and hear and use phonetically for us to be able to communicate better. And many words are made phonetically to say more than just the surface level meaning. And if we really see this, once we understand the structure of Masonic symbolism and the system of morality, then we can really start to see the underlined or occult language within our common vernacular. We'll be able to see and hear more than just the surface level in the common language. And just to be clear, it's really important to think of this language as mostly an intentional coding by the Masonic Brotherhood in our history, okay? And it's also important to think of it as an organic phenomenon by the universe, because the universe is always speaking. And if we have the spiritual technology of green language, then we can really receive these messages a lot clearer. We'll have more purpose in our understanding of what the universe is trying to say. And it's also my contention that it is the Masonic second degree of the student's spiritual journey, where the student is symbolically granted the eyes and ears to see and hear this green language, this balanced language, because it's the second degree where the moral compass is consciously aligned with, and natural law is realized and aligned to, which gives purpose to this language, this green language. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the second slide that says green language at the top. So this green language it's a language codified by man and nature. And codified meaning the arrangement of principles or rules into a systematic code. And also I say nature because it's a phonetic law, which is also about understanding a human's ability to mimic animal sounds, like an language or an original language. So green language is granted by the universe to those aligned in natural law, which means being morally aligned and conscious. Okay? And then it's also about embracing humility, being able to be humble and honest when using this language and letting go of ego, being, raising above ego, right? And then it's also for those who oppose man's authority, because man's authority is not only an illusion that's based in fear, but it's a limitation in our ability to go further into the research
shower
where
vodka.
we
Hell
raise
yeah.
in consciousness. But that doesn't mean to oppose the rules of grammar and words and their definitions, because it is the rules or the syntax of language that have to be obeyed first, as these are the principles that we use to be clear in our communication, but to not let the rules of grammar and definitions and pronunciations dictate or limit the investigation into words and their origins and their revealing phonetic interpretations or meanings or discoveries. Because this is all about your unique journey to be sovereign and find truth. Okay? It's up to you. It's not up to me. It's not up to anybody else. It's up to you to figure this out. But it's the serious student that realizes that the rules have to be obeyed, the principles have to be obeyed, or else the mind starts to, wander too far out. And I'm not saying to not think and wander out too far, because I think that's a healthy thing. But just remember to be anchored with the rules, right? So when you think about the first degree tracing board and you look at the middle initiate on the ladder, well, there's a anchor behind her, right? And that anchor is in the middle. And think about the initiate. She's in green and she's in the middle, right? So this is about care. It's about it being in the green middle frequency, right? And it's about the anchor, because you don't want to go too far up without something to hold you down,
I'll take you soon,
without
buddy.
something to ground you. But you want to be strong enough to be able to lift that anchor up and go far out. But just make sure that you understand that the principles have to be understood first, because principles are first things, right? And we have to understand principles are that which is most important, right? Now I'm going on to the third slide that says green language at the top. And this is a spiritual tool for the imagination. And I want to be very clear about that. This is a spiritual tool for the imagination, okay? And I kind of goofed up on my presentation, especially that says the presentation Reillumination of the Imagination, where I put spiritual tool of the imagination. And green language is not a spiritual tool of the imagination, because it doesn't come from the imagination. It is for the imagination. So I just wanted to correct that. And it was just a goof. I put together that presentation really quick, and I completely forgot about that and didn't, think about it deeply enough to make the correction until I made this show. So, I'm admitting my mistake. I was wrong, and I'm correcting it. And so it is very important to understand green language is a spiritual tool for the imagination, because it's a discovery that we make in nature. It's a tool that we discover in nature, a spiritual tool. And then we use the greatest tool of all, which is our imagination. We use both of these tools to understand and reveal the truth, right? That's what they're for. Green language is also known as the phonetic principle. And when in a balanced frequency, this language grants the student the ability to see and hear phonetically, and acronymically, and allegorically, and anagrammatically, which is the arrangement of letters as different words, and then etymologically and symbolically, and most importantly, morally. So green is the middle frequency of the visible spectrum. And in esoteric Freemasonry, the second degree is the middle degree. And this is part of understanding the middle path. And this is the path to truth. And it symbolizes the heart, which is the midpoint or place of balance. So when both hemispheres of the brain are aligned, then true intelligence begins to reveal a sovereign approach into how to look into things a lot deeper and see and listen and research with a moral and holistic ear and eye. Now I'm going to go to slide number 4. Green language is used with the power of perception to be able to see further into advanced expressions of literature and phonetics. And we can look at green language like a symbol in the sense that we can pull from it, right? We can pull from the words, which are bundles of symbols. So we can pull more than what the surface word is or the meaning of the word is on the surface, because the more we can pull from a word and really look at it objectively and see what it's saying and what it is not saying, then we can take what it is saying and add the clarity of what we're looking into or what we're searching for, right? Because it adds clarity to what we're searching for from the meaning of the word and the history of the word and the sound of the word and the moral code of the word to be able to see if it has any of that. So for example, this is not anything esoteric, really. I mean, it is esoteric, but it does have a moral code in it that's very interesting, and it's something I think anybody can relate to or can see for themselves easy, which is, if anybody knows about SeaWorld, okay, this big place where a lot of people go to watch, especially watch these big aquatic beasts do tricks, these orcas, these killer whales, and dolphins too. But especially the orcas, because the orcas are, the main event at SeaWorld, right? So all these people come to watch this animal, this aquatic animal, do tricks and splash people and make funny noises and do backflips and all that. Well, people who don't understand what's actually going on with these animals are being shammed because they don't understand that a big aquatic animal is not supposed to be confined in a bathtub. They're supposed to be swimming thousands of miles a day. So the main name of this aquatic animal in this show is Shamu. So right in the name it says sham you, right? Because it's a sham. People don't know that they're taking part in a sham. They don't understand that these animals are not supposed to be confined for the entertainment of people. And that's why, you look at the fins of the killer whales and they are curled over, which means that they're depressed. And they're just not supposed to be in there. It's immoral to keep these animals in these confined areas, these little bathtubs, just for the entertainment of the people. And people pay, they make millions and millions and millions of dollars off of these animals. And then they tell everybody, well, these animals are saved. They can't go back into the wild because, they'll get hurt or they'll die or whatever. But they're dying all the time at SeaWorld. And people don't understand that. So it's a sham, right? But then it's interesting because once we understand, like if you've ever seen Blackfish is a documentary all about these aquatic animals and the history of what they have gone through since SeaWorld first started. And it's a very sad documentary for sure, but it's very revealing because it helps us understand what is actually taking place. And I worked at SeaWorld, and I'll tell you, those animals are not happy to be there. And I was a caricature artist, and I was also asleep, but I was awake enough to know that those animals were not happy. But then once the interesting thing about the name Shamu is it also says shame you. So if you are someone who understands what is taking place with these animals and you go and pay to see them do tricks, even though you know that it's a sham and that it's immoral, it's shame on you for continuing to give in to this show and this immoral act. And also keep in mind that it doesn't matter who named this aquatic animal Shamu, the universe is always speaking, right? So it's telling us right to our face that this is wrong. And these animals are very intelligent, and they have no reason to be there other than to make, greedy men money. Okay? So it's very interesting how that word reveals so much. I mean, it reveals the history of the word. It reveals the moral code, obviously, and the sound of the word, the phonetic sound is telling you right to your face, right to your ear, right to the ear of your heart, because we all know that it's not right that they're in there. Deep down, we know that. Now I'm going to move to the 5th slide that says green language, heart-based intelligence. Now remember in show 53, I said that the word heart has the word ear in the middle, right? And to be able to really understand this, we have to listen with our heart. We have to listen with the ear of our heart. And that's what green language in the 2nd degree is all about, because it's about heart-based intelligence, which comes from the place of balance. So think about our brain for a second. And I said this in past shows and also in other presentations, but just to prove my point, the left brain is our intellect, right? And it is the part of our brain associated with reason and thinking, to be able to understand things objectively, right? And our right brain is our creative or generative part of our brain, the big picture or open-minded and listening with the ear of our heart part of our brain, and being able to see and recognize patterns and reflections. And this is the generative aspect. This is the generative principle. It's part of understanding the generative principle, okay? It's the heart-based aspect. And this is about the generation and uppercase care, right? It's our true care that it takes to do the right thing, to choose right behavior over wrong behavior, and aligning to natural law. Now, together, this bond or this bridge between the two hemispheres is what generates intelligence. So it's the intellect with the generative, the gents, the intel, I, gents, right? So you have the intel, the intellect, and the I being the I in the middle, and then the gents, the generative, the creative power, right? And they're binding together to create a balance in the mind. So it's about a balanced heart and mind together. And this is the place of the middle frequency, the middle heart frequency, being green, like, the Anahata heart chakra, right? So that is very, very important, because this is a science that the ancient Egyptians understood very deeply, because it's about understanding that the heart and mind aligned are one. Because that's where the balance is. Now I'm going to move on to the slide number 6. The slide that says the solfeggio scale. And something really interesting about the green middle frequency is its frequency is 528 hertz, which is pretty much the exact center of the whole electromagnetic color spectrum. And this one number, 528 hertz of the color system, is the same as the sound system. So it's both the same in the measurement frequency of color and the sound frequency. So 528 cycles per second is literally the core creative frequency of nature. And it's also about understanding that it's a healing type of music, right? So it's green from the solfeggio note, from the original solfeggio scale, and each solfeggio, each musical note or tone is comprised of a frequency required to balance our energy and keep our mind and body and spirit in perfect harmony. And green is the color between cayenne blue and yellow on the visible spectrum. And what it does is it evokes light, which has a dominant wavelength of roughly 495 to 570 nanometers. So it's very interesting, this solfeggio scale, when trying to understand green language, okay, because it's a frequency. Now I'm going to move to slide number 7. Now it's important that we also look into the etymology of green, which is the color of living and or growing plants. So think about that, because we're aligning, it's an alignment to nature, because green plants, green living growing plants are the visible nature. So we're aligning to that. The more we align to nature, the more we are aligning with green. So that's why green language is what it is, because we're aligning to nature, because it's a green language is a nature language. And then think about where, the green plants get their color, which is chlorophyll, right? And this is associated with nature, and it has been for, the beginning of time. Now I'm going to move on to slide number 8 that also says green language. So green language is a language of openness and pattern recognition, being able to entertain and etymologically research and phonetically test words or ideas that may expose that which is beyond the threshold of what is commonly known. Its use is about observing a word and the phonetic sounds and characteristics and definitions associated with the word to help come to a deeper and more thorough understanding and meaning. So that being said, it's okay to entertain words or ideas that might actually have no deeper meaning, right? Because that's part of being science-minded, and it's about testing the unknown, and you may or may not get anything out of it. And you have to remember, you are your own investigator. That's your birthright. And you may just start, reaching for something in hopes that you find what you're looking for, and that's okay, as long as you don't go spouting off that it's the truth or has any real validity. because many people, especially those who are left-brained, they tend to have many issues with wordplay like this as a means for searching for truth. And it's really understandable considering all the disinformation out there where people, force things to mean something that they don't actually mean. So green language is a very tough, abstract language or vision to be able to understand, let alone risk becoming a thinker in that way, because typically there's a lot of ridicule that comes with it. And as someone who practices green language regularly, it's a lifestyle for me. I really have found that it does help evolve consciousness in a way that connects ideas and understandings a lot faster and a lot clearer, because it's about getting to the clarity. It's about finding the higher definition of the self. And it doesn't mean that truth just automatically comes to you, but what it does mean is once the self has allowed openness to deeper meanings to words and ideas, then it becomes easier to receive answers that are harder to come by, that most people feel can only come from scientists or teachers or books or, some sort of authority figures or authority period. And green language is a higher order type of thinking because it helps find truth in a way that expedites the process of trying to understand the universe and the mysteries. Now we're going to move on to slide number 9 that says green language synonymous with. So this language is akin or synonymous with Adamic language, Enochian language, or angelic language, because it's a language that was believed to come from above or angels. It's a magic language. It's an emerald language. It's a language of calibration. It's a divine language. It's a mystical language in the sense that it goes beyond intellect. It's a language of the mystery tradition known as Kabbalah. It's a language of the gods. It's a language of light. It's the art of light. And of course, it's the language of the birds, which is the next part that I'm going to be covering. And it's a very important part of understanding green language. All these languages are a very important part of understanding green language, and they really shouldn't be looked over. All these languages, if you look deeper into them, the more you look into them, the better you'll understand green language. So we're going to talk about the language of the birds. So the bird is the word, right? Now, before I get into the esoteric and occult meanings of the language of the birds, I'd like to talk a little bit about birds and their behaviors in nature first, just to, paint the obvious picture of what's true about them that we can then use to see why they're so important to seeing and understanding the occult mystery traditions and sacred sciences. So what is it that actually defines a bird? Or, what is it that generally defines a bird? Well, a bird is warm-blooded. A bird is covered in feathers. A bird has 4 limbs, including 2 wings. And then there's a beak, right? So that's generally what all birds possess. Now, obviously, most birds have different attributes in comparison to other birds. So some birds can't fly and some birds can. Some birds fly super fast and high and some barely leave the ground. Some birds eat other animals. Some birds just eat plants and maybe some insects. Now, the point is that many birds have observable behaviors and attributes that us humans have learned from and studied for hundreds of thousands of years. So this leads me to one of the biggest desires of our human species. So for the most part, our species has always wanted to be what? As free as a bird, right? And obviously not just any bird, because I don't think anybody wants to be a turkey or an ostrich. But for generally speaking, most birds that fly, it's because they can freely fly wherever they instinctively feel, right? But what many animals, and especially birds, have taught us are attributes akin to our human consciousness. Many birds' ability to fly symbolically establishes them as messengers between the mysterious heavenly realm and the earthly material realm. And I put a slide up, number 10, with a bird as the head of the being. It's a whole body of a bird all sprawled out with the wings spread out all the way. Well, almost all the way. And I made this because this is really how our imagination has to think and see if we want to understand this language better. Okay, so when we look at bird head, it's not about we actually have a bird head. We have to just understand that it's about our essence, our spiritual essence in consciousness is about raising our consciousness like a bird raising itself from the ground. Okay, that's really how we have to think about it. Okay, so being raised in consciousness is about our bird self being raised, and going to our head, the top of our head, is about being high in consciousness. It's about being raised in consciousness. And then you look at the chin of the being and you see a bird tail. And it's my contention that the shape of the beard of the ancient Egyptian statues of the learned men, it's because they had, if you had bird tail beard, that means that you were raised, okay? And it makes sense because it corresponds. And we have to understand that when you look at a totem pole,
sorry, Nate.
Each for those relics. What do you say?
What did you need again?
Simple. Go to the old Westing estate and look for a baseball card, and a baseball mitt with signatures on all of them.
100 caps seems light. I need more.
I like your moxie. We'll make it 125 caps apiece. How's that sound?
Please. You own a whole store. You can do better.
Look at that fire in your eyes. All right.
Yeah.
50 caps for each piece. And you better be worth it. Deal?
Cough up them caps. I could do even more money. I know with my charisma, I could get more. But I'm not Jay Dyer, so I'm gonna let it run.
Got it.
I thank you.
Typically, there's a bird head, and sometimes with wings spread out at the very top. And this is corresponding to our consciousness.
Everyone does.
And many birds can defy gravity and freely move around in and between the elements, which we can emulate with the power of our imagination to go or fly between the outer world of the senses to an inner world, an inner vision which is how we can see and think symbolically, right? It's a spiritual correspondence. That's how we really have to understand this. And like I said, it's like the ancient totem poles with the bird head at the top, okay? So we have to understand that the totem poles with the bird head and all the other animals in between, reptile at the bottom and then mammal in the middle and typically bird head at the top, well, that's a correspondence to a fully raised human or different aspects of consciousness, different degrees of consciousness in a human, okay? So green language and the language of the birds isn't just about listening to words. It's also about looking at what the words are actually describing, so that way we know what we're looking into or what we're looking at. We have to look at the birds and the words together. And then when looking at and studying the jungle, we can see that birds make certain noises that, well, specifically noises and vibrations that can be heard but can't be seen, which is a lot like hearing a word and its phonetic similarity of something else without seeing the word, right? And this is where many people have a very tough time understanding this language because their mind isn't opened or developed to be able to translate information phonetically. So instead, what most people do is they quickly associate what they hear with a general definition that comforts their mind rather than entertain the other words that sound alike. Okay? So for example, I'm assuming most people listening have watched the cartoon known as The Simpsons. And I've talked to a few people about the green language in the name of that show, the title. And before I tell them about what I know or what I see in the name, I ask what they think it sounds like. What does it sound like to them? And they all just basically quickly go with what's comfortable to them by saying, oh, it's just a silly cartoon about yellow people, specifically a yellow cartoon family and their crazy adventures in their little town or whatever. And that's it. That's all it means. Nothing more. And, for some reason, they get this aggressive attitude that whatever I have to say or what I'm about to say is not what it means or worth their consideration, especially because they've listened to the creators and editors and different people that have actually worked on the show. And so they feel that they know exactly what the show is about because they've heard them. And this is one thing that I really see so much in most people is they think that the creators and directors that make these shows, these big shows, these cartoon shows or movies or whatever, most people think that they are telling them everything about the reason why they made the show or the ins and outs of the show itself and or movies. And what's interesting is they don't even consider that these people are only giving them the exoteric version of what the movie is or what the TV show or cartoon is. They don't consider that these people are not going to tell them the deeper meanings of why they created these shows or the writing for the shows. They're not going to get into the esoteric meaning because that would go over people's heads. And that's the truth. But anybody who can understand the esoteric world or the occult world, they understand what is actually being said. So people really need to understand the difference between esoteric and exoteric. So anyway, the word Simpsons doesn't just have green language in the name. The meaning is backed by what actually goes on in the show. So Simpsons can be broke down as Sim Sons, which would be a solar simulation, a solar cult simulation, as it's a solar people, aka sun worshippers, who are actually yellow like the sun. They have simple or symbolic rays of light as their hair, like the three kids, right? And then the show is a simulation of our actual reality in a lot of ways. And there's, definitely a lot of product placement in that show, but it's a simulation. The Simpsons is a cartoon simulation of the actual solar sun worshipers in reality. And we have to understand that Simpsons, we don't really enunciate the P. We don't say Simp Sons, we say Simpsons, right? But we also can look at the word S-I-M-P, simp, is short for simpleton, meaning simple, which is associated with ignorant or uneducated or unsophisticated or simple-minded or foolish. So it's a show of simulated solar sun worshipers living a foolish, uneducated life. Now deeply think about that. Think about the characters. Like what's the main father? The main father is Homer. Homer is so dumb and he's an alcoholic. Think about that. Bart is really dumb. He's always failing class and he's always in trouble, right? The whole town is full of really dumb people, right? Lisa, the daughter, is pretty much the only one that is kind of smart, right? But that's it. And then think of who this show is targeting. Who is it really made for? Is it made for kids? Well, some kids watch it. I watched it as a kid, more in my teens. But it's mostly made for adults because it has adult humor, right? And then you think of, well, what is the US mostly made of religiously? It's Christians. And Christians are solar worshipers. So it's a simulated mockery, a reflection of the degenerate Christian families in the US and their communities, right? So think about that. And I'm not hating on Christianity itself, and I'm not hating on the wit or animation of that show. I'm not saying it's a stupid show or it's not funny, but we have to not only see the green language and how it's used both positively or negatively, like I just shared with you, but it's also about keeping the adults in a childlike state. It's a cartoon used as the standard adult programming template. Most mainstream cartoons are that have adult humor, okay? That's what adult cartoons are used for. They're propaganda weapons. It's to subtly sell propaganda in a funny, silly, fun way to adults, where adults think they're, many adults think they're finding truth through these cartoons about what's actually taking place in reality, like Simpsons or Family Guy or South Park. I mean, it's beyond silly.
Ready.
But
Then let's get moving.
If you're wondering what happened
That way.
once I tried to share this information about this cartoon
What?
in this
Don't
way,
call dog meat a dirty little mole rat. What?
let's just put it this way: it wasn't received well, and all the times, every time I've done that. I mean, not with my open-minded friends and family, but with
all right,
those
PS4 is gonna cut us
people who are
off.
very closed off.
It's gonna cut us off. Stay tuned and stay golden, everybody.